Hello, how are you, Abe?
All right.
All right, it's good enough, right?
Well, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't.
All
But
right,
right now it's okay.
all right.
Yeah. So you didn't hear either way.
Hmm?
You didn't hear either way whether there is or not today.
You know what? I'm sorry
If there's a shear today or not.
about the time of the year.
Yeah, if there is one today,
Yes,
should
at
be.
at 5. That's what Walter wrote.
Walter did write that? Oh, that's it.
Yeah, he answered back.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mario.
Hi, Walter.
How are you?
Good.
Well, I have your side today, so I'm just waiting for it. I wanted to tell you
For
my
your dad?
for my dad. It's 50 years. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. He actually died on Friday. Also, was the
Hmm.
weekend of Intebi.
Oh.
Yeah, it's 50 years since Intebi too.
Hmm.
Abe, how are you?
Hashem, how are you?
Okay, good. Baruch Hashem.
Fathers and children should have an aliyah.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Same here.
Thank you, Mario.
My father's 76 years, Walter.
Oh my goodness. Steve. Hey, Steve. Yeah, hello. Yes, Mario. You're not recording, are you?
I am, but if you want, I'll stop it.
Thank you. Okay.
Hello.
Ernie,
Somebody
Ernie,
chop chop in the hair.
you had a haircut today?
You
Yeah.
can tell, or the gardener put the lawnmower there, one or the other.
Oh, he looks very handsome. Anyway, Ernie, uh, please, it's for that my your side today is the Ilu Nishmat Shmuel ben Abraham Gedalia.
Okay, the daf today, which is daf Mem Tes Amud Beis and daf Nun, will be Leilu Nishmas Rav Shmuel ben Avram Gedalia?
Abraham Gedalia, yes.
Avram Gedalia. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Tomorrow, we're at Young Israel at 6:30 p.m.
Yes.
Sunday night, I would like to learn either earlier, like maybe 5 o'clock, or we could learn at 9 o'clock because we have these Sefer Ezra at 8 o'clock, so we can do it at 9 o'clock, or we could do it a little earlier, like
I
five
pre- okay, I don't know. I can't do
or 4:30. Is 4:30 better?
4:30. If we finish by 5, is okay.
Yeah, okay. Abe, is that okay for you? 4:30? Okay. Mario, 4:30 is okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. We'll do 4:30. That works out. Okay. So we learned Mem Tes Omid Aleph. Now we're going to do Mem Tes Omid Beis. Lavi Chelev Shal Gabi Adakim. Div Rabbi Shmuel. Fat that's covering the intestines is prohibited fat. Rabbi Kiva Omer Lavi Chelev Shal Gabi Akeva. It's fat that's overlying the keva is the abomasum, which was the keref, the first big stomach. And Rabbi Shmuel, according to this opinion, allows you to eat that fat on the keva. But for Aminu, we see a brisa just the opposite. Ves kol hachelev asher ala kerev, the prohibited fat on the intestines. Here, Rabbi Shmuel or Machelev amchasas hakerev krum v'niklaf. They have a membrane. They're in a membrane. You can peel them off. I've called krum v'niklaf. So anyone which and the fat that is on the keva can be done that way. So here, Rabbi Shmuel is learning that the keva fat is prohibited, and Rabbi Kiva or Machelev amchasas hakerev toitav krum v'niklaf. I've called totov krum v'niklaf. It's got to be a drape, like something called the omentum, which drapes over. So here, it's just the opposite. Rabbi Kiva holds that the chelev on the kerem is permitted. Shalach Ravi Mishmei Rav Yechnin kachi atzar shel Mishnah ve'epoch kamaisa. You have to. The second baraisa that we quoted is the correct opinion. That Rabbi Shmuel says that the chelev on the keva is prohibited. And the first price of Epich Kamaison, you have to, that's not correct. Why are you switching the first one? Why not switch the second one? Because it gave us a reason. It said it had to be in a membrane, it had to be peeled off. Rabbi Shmuel said that the Kohanim ate the fat of the keva. But that can't be according to Rabbi Shmuel if it's prohibited. It would be Rabbi Kiva, not Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel quoted it in the name of the forefathers, but he didn't hold like that. Amar Rav. So there is fat on the intestines that permitted fat. And then there's these draping fats that are prohibited. So chelev tohor, permitted fat, if it plugs up a hole in the intestine, soisei, that can correct a hole in the intestine, and the animal's not treif. Chelev that is tamei, the omentum type of chelev, which is prohibited, if it plugs a hole in the intestine, it does not cure the problem. But Rav Sheshes says both will plug the hole. Now, a deer, which is a chaya, only the chelev of a behema, of a domesticated animal, like a cow or a sheep or a goat, that chelev is prohibited. Chelev of a chaya is permitted. So the Gemara wants to know, is the chelev of a chaya which is allowed to be eaten, is it also not serves to plug a hole in the intestine? Is it davka amar chelev Torah soisem? Behind nami Torah, this can be eaten. So maybe we would say it has the ability to plug. Oidilma mishum de mahadik. Fat that's permitted as a plug is because it sticks tightly to the intestine. The other type of chelev does not. And v'hai lo mahadik, this type of chelev in a deer, it might be permitted to eat, but it doesn't have the same consistency. One has nothing to do with the other. You're allowed to eat it, but it's a non-sticky type of fat. Therefore, it does not serve to close up a hole in the intestine. There was a case, they shechted an animal, there was a hole in the intestine, and prohibited chelev, it sealed it up. Amar Rav, my nekushla. Why should we treif it? Chada, to Amar Rav Sheshes Chaylev Taminami says it. You have an Amoira Rav Sheshes who also said that even prohibited chaylev can plug it up. The old, you have another principle. HaTorah chasa al mamonim shel Yisrael. The Torah is worried for Klal Yisrael losing money. So if you can paskin so that the animal is not treif, it falls under that category as well. Rav Papa Rava, Ravi Sur Deraisa. Yeah, just because Rav Sheshes said that Chaylev Tami can plug up a hole, but Rav held that prohibited Chaylev cannot plug up a hole. And this issue is a derisidic issue, whether it should be treif or not. And you say based on financial loss, we should paskin so to matter something that is also midaraisa. Manyumin kanduka igloile besad kedusha. Manyumin had a pot that was filled with honey that was left uncovered. Now we know water that's left uncovered you can't drink because we're concerned that a snake deposited venom. Well, what about honey? There's no reason to prohibit. 3 kinds of liquids that if you leave them uncovered, you can't drink them. Yayin, mayim, cholav. Wine, water, milk. Ushar kol hamashkim mutarim. Other liquids, and honey falls under that category. We don't have to worry about it. And you have a second reason to be lenient. HaTorah chasam amanim shel Yisrael. Why should you just say it's can't be eaten? You're causing financial loss. Reb Shimon v'sakanta nefashos. First of all, you have Reb Shimon, who held that even uncovered honey is dangerous, because this is an issue of danger. Because if a snake deposited venom and you eat it, it could be a life-threatening problem. So sakana nefashos is more important than monetary loss. Reb Shimon Mayi, where is this Reb Shimon? The Tanya. There are 5 liquids where there's no din of leaving it uncovered. Seer, which is fish brine, choimetz vinegar, shemen is oil, dvash, umurius. Murius is a dip also made from the intestines of fish. But Rab Shimon Omer avhein yesh ben mishum gilui. All 5 liquids, we have to worry about gilui. V'omer Rab Shimon, ani ra'iti nachash shasat tzir b'tzida. I saw a snake that drank from brine in Sidon. Amar lo shati havel. Yeah, the snake must have been crazy. Vein mevi'in rayim and ashoitim. Right, the Chachamim will argue with Reb Shimon and say that these 5 liquids, there is no problem with Gilui. They said you can't rely on a crazy snake. Now, back to the pot of honey. Amar lei, oidili mias batzir, that we don't paskin like Reb Shimon. Darapav Ravuna Bredi V'Shim Rabbanu Ki Havale Gilgula Shadu LeBetzir. If they had water that was left uncovered, which now they can't drink, they would pour it into brine. The brine itself would neutralize venom. Now, certainly if brine can neutralize venom, then there's no problem with a snake because it's going to neutralize the venom. So we see we're not following the Chumr of Rav Shimon. So we probably shouldn't follow it regarding honey either. Amarle oiduli mia bidvash. Fine. We don't agree with Rav Shimon regarding brine, but we do follow the prohibition of Rav Shimon regarding honey. Rav Shimon ben Elazar koi kavase. Shimon ben Elazar holds like him. The Tanya, the Chenai Rav Shimon ben Elazar oiser bidvash. That honey left uncovered, you would not be able to eat. Rav Nachman. Chelav asui kekova ein asose. This fat that looks like a helmet cannot serve to close a hole in an intestine. Now, where is this fat? Hey, it's around the rectum. It's the fat around the heart. So, Amarava. Shema mined Rav Nachman Tarti. I learned 2 halachos from Rav Nachman. Chimtzu bar chimtzu chad sasim v'chad lo sasim. You have 2 fats that overlie the abu masum, that big stomach. One is called chimtza, one is bar chimtza. One can close up a hole, and another can't. But I don't know which was which. But Rav Huna bar chimtza, Rav Huna Rav Nachman Amar, chimtzasim, the bar chimtza will close it up. Chimtza lo yisas. Amrav tavus v'simanech yafa kocha ben mikocha. The son, right? Bar chimtza, the son of chimtza, it works stronger than the father. Now, which fat? Hey chimtza, hey bar chimtza. Which one is which? Tosh Madam Rav Nachman. Inu mechel achli. One of the fats that surround this Abu Masim, the people in Eretz Yisrael ate it. But in Bavel, we did not eat it. Well, he did not miss them nami loy sauce. For us, that fat did not close up a hole. So, but in Eretz Yisrael, where they do eat it, there, it must be able to close up a hole. Now, the akashta kulam lo pligi de asr. The Abu Masam, there's the outside and then there's the inside. So the outside is always forbidden. Ki pligi daisraisa, the fat on the inside. There, everyone holds it's permitted. And ki pligi da akashta, only on the outside. There's a machlokas whether it's permitted or not. That we have to trim off that fat on the inside and we can eat the rest. If you skim it off on the inside, you can eat it. We were in front of Ravami. They skimmed off that fat from the inside of the stomach, and that they were able to eat. Shamed Rav Chanina V'Kai, we're on Nun now. So this tape, the recording, I will list it as 49b and 50. Rav Avi Kamina Ravami. They trimmed it off and they ate it. Shamed Rav Chanina V'Kai Kamed Rav Chanina. Rav Chanina, his servant, was standing in front of Rav Chanina. Amalei, make sure you trim off the fat and then give it to me to eat. He sort of delayed doing it. What are you, Babylonian? Which says it's completely forbidden? Gum shade. So then you have to throw the whole thing away, meaning all the fat, and then you can't eat it. Okay. Tanya. Rav Shimon Gamliel Loib. B'nei me'ayin shenikvu. If there's a hole in the intestine, now the intestines make mucus. If the mucus seals it, it's kosher. My lecha, on Rav Kana, shirka demanded nafik agab duchka. It's the mucus of the intestine that you press out when you squeeze out. Gemira chavid rababam rababa. The chaved of Rabba, who we talking about? Rab Zera wanted to know. Ba'amila chavid Rab Zera, or that the friends of Rab Zera learned it from Rab Zera, and who was the friend? Ba'an Rav Abba. On Rav Abba, braid Rav Chia Barava. Hachi am Rav Chia Barava am Rav Yerkanan. Halacha Rav Shimon Gamliel betreifa, regarding this law that the intestines that are plugged up by the mucus is kosher. Halacha Rav Shimon be'evel, and halachas of Rav Shimon regarding avelis. Now, what's this? Halacha Rav Shimon Gamliel betreifa adamrina, that if the mucus can plug up the whole of the intestine, it's kosher. To Rav Shimon be'evel ma'i. What is this that the halachas of Rav Shimon by avelis? This is not. Let's say there was a relative who showed up late when they were sitting shiva, and he comes to where they were sitting shiva. If he comes from a very close place, within a day's journey of where he was, he picks up the count with the people sitting there. He doesn't have to, he just counts 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He doesn't have to count 1, 2, 3. Now, if he comes from a place more than 1 day's journey away, then he has to count 7 days. If he comes beyond 3 days, then even if he came from a close place, he has to count 7 days by himself. He's Mekel. He says, even if you come on the 7th day, if you came from a close place, you just count with the people there. And if they only have 1 day left, you only have 1 day left. Amr Mandahu, somebody who had heard these halachas, Iski ve'esik v'garme l'shmaitz me'upimidamar. I wish I went up to Eretz Yisrael to hear it directly from a Rav Abba. Kisalik, when this man eventually went, Rav Abba, he met up with Rav Abba. Were you the one who said that the halachas Rav Shimon Gamliel regarding treifas? Yeah, but what I said was that the halacha is not like him. Okay, what about what you said about Rav Shimon be'evel mai? What did you, when you said the halachas Rav Shimon Gamliel by avelis, does that apply? That's a machlokes the itma. Rav Chizda Amar halacha. Rav Chizda held the halacha was like Rav Shimon. V'chein Rav Yochanan halacha. But Rav Nachman Amar ein halacha. And the final answer, ein halacha Rav Shimon Gamliel b'treif. The halacha is not like Rav Shimon, that mucus does not serve to close up a hole of the intestine. However, halacha Rav Shimon be'eva. We are lenient by avelis, because there's a famous principle, Amar Shmuel, halacha k'divrei hamekel be'eva. We are always lenient by avelis. Rav Shimi bar Chia, makifim b'nei me'ay. Let's say you see a hole after shchita, you examine the intestines and there's a hole. So there's a process called hakafa. Now, we don't know, was this hole made after shchita? Or was it made before shchita? If it's made before shchita, when the animal was still alive, this is a defect that caused it to be treif. If the hole was made after shchita, it's not treif. So what do? You make another hole right next to the original hole, and you see what it looks like. If the hole looks like the hole you just made, it must be that the hole that was made is after shchita. Because a hole that's made while the animal's alive versus a hole that's made after it's dead is different in appearance. That's called hakafa. And Rav Shimi says, you are makifin by bnei me'ay. And the Gemara has a case. Hanub Ne'emayin Dasal Kamei de Rava. There were these intestines that were brought in front of Rava. Akfinu v'lo yidamu. They made holes, and it didn't look the same. So they thought that the hole in the intestine must have been made before Shechita, and therefore it's treif. His son came and he sort of massaged the intestine, and now it looked like the hole that was made. So it's not just enough to make a hole, you have to do like this massage. Rav said, how did you know this trick? Think about how many hands had handled these intestines before they actually brought it to you. So I figured we better put some hands on it to make a proper comparison. This was his son. He claimed that his son was as wise as Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan was a master in treifus. Rav Yochanan Rabbi Elazar Damar Tarvayu Makifin Bereya. This experiment with making a hole after shchita next to the other hole, you can check by the lung as well to see whether the hole in the lung was made before or after. And Amar Rav Loimer Boisa Ruga, it has to be in the same line of the lobes. Aval Maruga Laruga lo. But comparing from one row to another, that's not good. But Behilchasa, Afilu Maruga Laruga, even if you compare from one row to another, it makes sense. And Midaka Ladaka Migas Lagas, but it's got to be a small animal with a small animal, a large animal with a large animal. Aval Lo Migas Ladaka, Lo Midaka Lagas, but not from a large to a small. Abaye v'Ravadamar Tavay Makifin Bekane. You can do this experiment with the trachea. It's got to be the same tracheal ring. But the third ring versus the fourth ring, you can't compare. However, you can, as long as it's the cartilaginous ring, you can compare. But now the back of the trachea was not cartilage, it was just tissue. So that you can compare one to another. But the cartilaginous tracheal ring, making a hole in that and making a hole in the soft tissue behind, that you can't compare. Okay. Amar Ziri. The rectum is the last part of the colon, right? If it's got a hole in it, it's kosher. It's not like the other's intestines. Where it is, it's right between the hips, and it sort of gives support to the rectum. Think of it, and if you have the problem with having a hole in the intestine, is the material inside the intestine is going to leak out into the abdominal cavity. You're going to get peritonitis. The animal's going to die. The rectum is below the peritoneum, and in this area, leakage is not going to cause the animal to get too sick. Kama on Rabbi Lo and Rav Yochanan mokam adavik beruvo, where more than 50% is connected to the hips, and in that place where it's going to create a problem, it's got to be divided by 51%. Amru Abba Kamed Rav Rav Nachman. Don't hang this halach on Rav Nachman. Muki stiki, these like empty containers. Hachi am Rav Nachman. Makom adavek afilu nitel kulo kosher. In this area below the peritoneum, where it's between the hips, there, even if almost the whole thing was removed, the animal remains kosher. As long as you can grasp a small amount of the rectum. The width of a finger by an ox. If that's how much rectum remains, that could be okay. Then, hakerem apnimi, which is the obamasum. There's an inner part and an outer part. Now we're talking about the inner part. I mean, Rav, hey, Nasan Barshila Reish Tabacha the Tzipori. Nasan, the big butcher in Tzipori, testified Lifnei Rabbi Mishum Rav Nasan, Ezeu Kerem Apnimi. What is this inner kerem? Sanya Dichi, the cecum. The cecum is like, they don't have an appendix, but it's like the beginning of the large colon. Rabbi Shmuel Omer, Istumcha de Kresa. No, it's sort of the inner part of the stomach. Ravasi Omer Rav Yochanan, Makam Tsar Yesh Bakerem Ben Yodea Ezehu. In this kerem, which is the first stomach, the abomasum, there's an area on the inside of it that's called, it's a narrow area, but I don't know what you call it. Amr Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Nafal Kresa Bebira. Well, then you haven't answered anything. Amr Rav Acha bar Avi Amr Rav Asi min hameitzer lamata. In this kerem, if it narrows going down, as it goes to the asad, because going down, we flipped the cow standing on its head, because that's how they hang it in front of the butcher. So it's the part of the stomach that goes to the esophagus. That's the inner kerem. Rav Yaakov bar Nachman Amar Shmuel Malkam Shein Bo Milas. It doesn't have the villi on the inside. Rav Avina Amar Gniva Mishmei Rav Tefach Baveshet Samuch LaKerem Zui Kerem Apnimis. The last tefach of the esophagus, that's the inner kerem. Amar bar Rav Mishmei Rav Yosef bar Chanina Kol HaKerem Kulo Zui Kerem Apnimis. The whole kerem is called the kerem apnimis. Ve'zeo kerem achitzon. What is the outside kerem? Basar achoypas rava kerem. The abdominal wall that covers the stomach. Rabbi Vonamar miparta. This kerem is the mifrata. My mifrata. Amrav hecha de pari tabache. It's the first, when they open up the belly and they see the stomach hanging, that's what's called the inner kerem. Ben Arda, Abdi Kerava Baravuna. In Arda, they held like Baravuna that this is the closest part when they open up the abdomen. What about the other? We had about 5 or 6 other possibilities of what the inner kerem was. They're all included in this din of Rav Ravuna. He includes all these areas. So misafek, they're all included in the kerem. What is an afkamina? Because remember, in order for it's not just a hole in the kerem. You have to have like a large amount of area to be open in order for it to be treif. Udravasi am Rav Yochanan Mai. This thing that we didn't understand, which was a narrow section, did he include that? We already said it's the one closest to the esophagus. What about who said that the whole thing was the inner part? That they argue with the Nardoins. Period. Then in this kerem, if it's a tefach, that's the measure which would make it treif. Rav Yehuda big doil. On Rav Yehuda bar Nefet Rav Elazar. Lo gedoil gedol mamish lo ketana mamish. It doesn't mean a large animal and a small animal. Ella kol shenikra ba tefach. If there's a tefach tear v'lo ruba, but it's not the majority of the circumference, zui sheshanina big doil tefach. That's when we say if the kerem is torn and it's not the majority, but it's a tefach, it would be a problem. Ruba v'lo tefach zui sheshanina big tanabu. If it's the majority, but it's not a tefach, that's when we talked about the ktan. So ruba v'lo tefach pshita. If it's the majority in that area, then of course it would be a davar pashut even if it's not a tefach. Lo tzrich dav tefach b'mashu. it's a little bit less than a tefach. Maybe you would say you'd need both. You'd need the rov and the tefach. Kamash blunted, no. Even the rov in that case would work. Amar Gniv Amar Ravasi. Nikdira Kasela Treifa. If this kerem had a hole the size of a coin, it's treif. Shim Timotech Tamar la tefach. If you stretch it, it would be turned into a tefach. Amar Chia Baraval Didi Mifreshli Minei Digniva Amavred in Ardo. He told me this when we were crossing the bridge in Ardo. Kasela Ksheira Yosrmi Kasela Treifa. The exact sela, then it would not be treif. If it's more than a sela, it would be treif. Hamar Yeser Mikasela. How much is that? Rav Yosef, Kigunda island plus Kashisa. If 3 date pits can pass through the hole. Bitsipa Beduchka. They had a little bit of fruit. Below Tsipa Bervacha. Without fruit, it goes in and out easily. So that gives us a sign based on something that we know. Hemses Ubesa Koises. The hemses is the old masum, and the besakosis is the reticulum. These are parts of the 4 stomachs. If you find a needle in the reticulum, if it was only found mitzadechad kshev, if it's only from the inner wall, not on the outside, it's kosher. But if it goes through and through, from the outside to the inside, mishnei tzadim treifa. Nimtza le'akor dam, if you find a little blood, b'yadush lifnei shchita, then we know for sure it would happen before shchita. Lo nimtza le'akor dam, if there's no blood on the needle, b'yadush lachar shchita, it happened after shchita. Okay, we'll stop here.
Okay,
Okay, tomorrow, 6:30,
6:30.
4:30 on Sunday, 8 o'clock, Novi Shir.
Ernie, Shkoyach. Ernie, if you can come to Mincha, we may need a minyan. I don't know how many people. There are a lot of people missing. So if you can
I'm
come.
at 6:30, right?
Yeah, please. Okay. Shkoyach. Shkoyach, thank you.
Shabbat.